Welcome, everyone. This is our very first episode of Suburban Sex. I am Addy, and we also have Remy, and we are married,
but not to each other.
not to each other. There's the twist. Yes, we have a sex podcast that goes through the suburban married, sometimes vanilla with a little bit of sprinkles, but we just we really like talking about sex with our friends, and it's just kind of fun to chat through what works, what doesn't, and we just realized we could we could really talk about this more, open our audience up more than our friend group, and just really getting into the heart of what we enjoy the most, talking about sex. What do you think,
I
Remy?
think in our friend group, you're definitely the person that adds the whipped cream and sprinkles in all the conversation. You kind of take it just a little extra, but it's a lot of fun. So
It
I'm certainly
is.
honored to be doing this podcast with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love that you're giving us the husband flavor of the whole bit. I have this girl talk with your wife, obviously, and our girlfriends regularly. We have girls' nights, we have girls' trips that we take, and I just find hearing about each other's sex life is so interesting because we're all so different, and something that works for me does not at all work for others, and vice versa. And but even just the act of talking about it gets us a little bit more open, I think. We share toys that work, we share tips that work, what
Now,
works for
wait,
us to
wait,
get in
wait,
the
wait.
mood.
You don't share the toys, right? You just share
Okay, good point. Good
stories
point.
about the toys. I'm assuming I didn't
Yeah,
sound
we're
right.
not switching toys. Thank you
Okay,
for
just making
that.
sure.
This is awkward, that we're talking about each other's sex lives together, but we're not that awkward. We're not sharing
Exactly.
sex toys
I mean, we've
overall.
known each other a long time, but we do have limits.
True, true. Yeah, we're still kind of, I would say normal, normal
I hope
for
so.
us having a sex podcast, but normal, very, very suburban, very married, very corporate. We're typical parents, I think. But yeah, we've
Well,
we've known each other for what? It's been over a decade, right?
yeah, I mean, we didn't have kids when we first met, so we
Mhm.
were friends before there was little ones involved.
That's right. That's right. And I've got 3 of my own. And they keep us pretty busy. They're somewhat young, elementary school age, and a little bit younger than that.
So I was there when when Addie first was dating her now husband.
Mhm.
They weren't even married, and then we couldn't even go to the wedding because we were pregnant with our first child.
Yeah.
Oh, and we missed it. It was a great wedding from the pictures.
Oh, yeah,
Missed
yeah.
out,
But,
so
our 10-year anniversary is coming up next year, so, you just need to make sure that you make it out to that one.
that's right.
Mhm, mhm.
So we started this podcast. So tell us about what the conversation. How did this start? Just for our listeners to give them some background.
Yeah, I mean, it really boils down to, the 2 of us. We just first of all, we like to talk about sex, and kind of in an awkward way, but it's never that awkward with just chatting it up with friends. We at least for the girl talk that I have, I get so energized by hearing about how my friends are doing overall with their marriage. It's not just about sex. I mean, we know your sex life has to do with how the health of your marriage and how your dynamic is and whatnot. So it's also just kind of checking in with friends on how things are going and what's working, what's not, and knowing that we're all.
Part of the stigma is that married sex is boring.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
And I think for some it might be, but we're in our 40s, and we don't I think the 2 of us, we can appreciate that it is seen as boring, and we know that we have a long however many decades, long life ahead of us with our spouse, that if we make it boring now, it's not gonna last. I mean, we have to make it a priority, right?
Yeah, because my opinion is by prioritizing your sex, you're prioritizing your partner.
Yeah,
You're creating this bond that's between you and your partner that, if you neglect working out, your muscles are going to get weak. You don't want that with your relationship. You want
that's
to
true.
focus on that.
Yeah, yeah. And Remy, it's really hard. I am like I said, I feel like I'm pretty typical. I've got 3 kids, they're pretty young. I've been married for 10 years. I work a corporate job. I'm very busy and stressed with work at many times in the day, in the week, and it can be really hard to balance that out and still have a healthy sex life. And I think that's why I'm so intrigued by it and intrigued about talking it about it with other people because it is hard to maintain. I am not a sex bot as much as my husband would love for me to be. It is not so easy for me to just turn it on any which way at any which moment because we're just busy. We've got too much going on. So I think that's why I'm also intrigued by this whole sex podcast concept because it's hard for us as women, and I think it's helpful to talk about it so we don't feel so alone. I know that's how I feel when I chat with my girls, but then also to get your perspective, Remy, from a husband's side of what you want from your partner and I mean, we typically know what men are thinking. Y'all make it pretty obvious, but, I think
Or a
it's good
little
for
bit
us to
more
kind of
predictable.
I think so. I think you're right. And I am certainly not predictable. I think Brad has a really tough time, trying to predict my mood and my when I'm actually going to be in the mood, but I'm really trying to be thoughtful about it because, I mean, like I said, we're in our 40s. We have a long road ahead of us. I've got to make sure that it's good. If it's not good for me, then it's sure not going to last.
And I think as we proceed, we're going to bring on a lot of our friends and our friend group. There's a lot of variety in terms of their habits, what they like, how
Hmm.
often they have sex. And, we've had these conversations with friends and we've started to realize no two couples are the exact same. There are some women that want it more than others. And I do know that after girls' night and you guys have had a good conversation, my odds are better. So that's the other thing that made me think, okay, this podcast is a good idea because if we can focus on it just a little bit more, it's not out of sight, out of mind when life gets busy.
That is so true. That is so true. I mean, I I know I get a little bit more, excitable, and turned on when I get home after a girls' night because it just the thought of it, just talking through it and thinking about, what's working, what doesn't, and kind of getting excited about it again, making it part of a more natural part of the conversation with our friends. I mean, we'll get into this in many episodes, but like it's not so easy for me as a woman to just turn on porn and then I'm good to go. It there's a lot more going on in my brain to try to get there, but I think part of just making it a natural conversation with girlfriends, with my husband too. We need to talk about it often as well, but that just kind of it helps opening things up a bit more.
Yeah, I'm excited just to open that dialogue because I think learning it takes skills and intentionality to talk about that with your partner. But a sex podcast, there's so many things we can talk about. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, sex toys is one. Um,
Uh-huh.
Masturbation's always another one.
Ooh. Yep. Yep.
What about oral sex? I think maybe that should be our first topic because that's one that everybody likes.
We are going straight for it, aren't
We're
we?
going straight for it.
Let's get past all that awkwardness and dive right in.
Well, sometimes, you have to lean into the awkwardness, and
I
then that way,
guess.
hey, everybody's more comfortable once you get past that first step.
I guess so. We might as well lean into that awkwardness for the whole world to hear.
That's right. Well, in my
Not
mind, it's just us talking. But hey, I,
sure.
I, I do want to acknowledge we will have listeners one of these days. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. And if you have ideas for other things for us to talk about, we'll have contact information in the show notes. But we'd love to hear from our listeners too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And we hear from our friend group. We've got a pretty solid group there's 6 of us, 6 couples. We've been friends for, 10 or so years, even just the greater group of us. The girls will go on trips together, the guys will go on trips together. And we've created this bond, but opening it up for, I mean, we hear each other's sex lives and, little tidbits here and there. Obviously, we don't know every bit, but hearing from all of our listeners as well will be so interesting because everyone is just so different.
That's so true. One of the
Mhm.
things that has been the most interesting to me during conversations in the group have been just talking about the difference in how often people do certain things. So, oral sex being the topic,
Mhm.
once you get into the stage of life where you have kids and you're working, a lot of people, they're barely having oral sex at all if they're even having sex. And then, so it's interesting just to have those conversations. I have friends that, I've asked them, so, we've when that topic has come up, how are things in that area? And they said, well, I might get it on Father's Day.
Oh. Oh,
Maybe my
yikes.
birthday.
Is that only, a present? That's a present that you get once or twice a year? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's hard.
I know. It's hard, but um
We hope it's hard.
no, I've heard something similar from my girls, and so we had a party a couple months ago where this came up because it's me and I'm probably the one who brought it up, let's be honest. But I uh, we always talk about frequency. I am always so curious about how often people are having sex and whatnot. And I think part of that is also because my husband Brad is a I'm going to call him a sex enthusiast. Remy, you pretty much fall in that bucket too. Let's be real. But he wants it all the time. So I am always kind of comparing and just hearing how how often it happens for others, just to kind of know what's my baseline, where do we stand? How are we doing? So it's good to kind of give yourself a health check. And Remy, it's not even just about how often they're having sex, but also things like oral. How often that's actually happening. And to your point, I think a lot of couples when they get married, especially when they have kids, they're probably thinking, I don't have time for that shit. Like, I'm sure blowjobs were a thing of, you're dating and you're impressing your man and this and that. But when we're married, I mean, our men still want that. So I find it so interesting if that's really just like a holiday activity, then, um, I mean, it doesn't have to be a job, even though it is named a job for a reason, but it doesn't have to be a job. I think there's something kind of fun about getting your man turned on and, being part of adding something a little different to the mix. Missionary is one position out of I don't know how many. Remy, you probably know the stat on that, however many
There's a
actual
lot out
positions
there.
there are.
So for you guys, I don't know. I'm sure it varies from couple to couple, but is oral sex the main act, or is it simply foreplay?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, and this is where I'm sure Brad would want to interject. And for those of you listening, Brad is my husband, and he is wonderful, and he's also our producer. So he's going to hear every bit of our sex talk
Hi.
throughout.
Hi, I'm here.
He is here.
Thanks for
Um,
having me on the show, guys. Happy to be here.
Stop. You don't have a choice. Remember, you're our producer.
That's right.
Um, but okay, so Remy, to your point, it's very different for each of us. So Brad would go down on me every single day if I let him.
Good man.
I know, I know. And you know what? I wish I would let him as often as he would want to. I think that would make everyone happy, but I just can't mentally just turn it on like that, and it's not that enjoyable to me if I'm not mentally turned on. So I shut him down many times, and it's not his favorite, but that is what he would love to be as a norm for every sexcapade we have.
Well, I've spoiled you.
Oh my god.
The man deserves a
I've
medal.
clearly spoiled you
Yeah,
because
what is he?
and I don't know how common it is for guys to want to do that every chance they get. I don't know
True.
if I'm unusual. We need to take a poll or something
I
because
know, we should take a
I feel
poll.
like at least the stereotype is that most guys do not want to do it if they can avoid it. But that's what doing it to you is what does it for me.
Yeah.
Like, I could be totally not in the mood, and I do that, and it's boing
Oh, yeah.
immediately.
It's so true.
So, maybe I'm just a perv, I don't know. I mean, I know I'm a perv,
Yeah,
but I mean,
you are.
maybe I'm
Yeah.
weird in that way? I
Yeah.
don't know. What about you, Remy?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a something I want more than she does. I have way more interest in making it more of a main event
Hmm.
type experience where, for her sometimes it works, but I think it has to do with the mental boxes. I know we haven't quite talked about that in on the podcast yet, but you can tell if her head's not in it,
Mhm.
she's not gonna receive it. She's not gonna be into it at all. So
Oh, yeah.
I think the attitude goes to both ways. Number one, she has to be in a place where she is open to it, but then I think the giver has to be in have the attitude that they're actually enjoying the experience too.
Mhm.
So since he loves it so much, it's probably easier for you to just relax into it. Where if some guys never do it, you can't. The woman's probably, well, does he even like it? What if there's issues?
Mhm.
What if I'm not? What if he's not having fun? Is it going to take a while? And then you're in your head.
Right. Right. So, a couple of pieces to that. One is when I am in my head and I even though I know he loves it and I know it will get him there immediately, if I'm not mentally there, it truly feels icky. It feels like kind of wrong, like it like he shouldn't be there kind of thing. So I absolutely have to be at least slightly turned on in order for me to get there. And Remy mentioned the mental boxes. We'll go into more detail on this, but just picture having so many boxes in your head and you've got work and kids and sex is a box, your marriage is a box, your house. I mean, all of the responsibilities in your head for me, in order to get turned on, the other boxes have to close one by one. For my husband, the moment his penis gets hard, the other boxes just shut down altogether. So I think it's just very different for how we think about it and think and get ourselves mentally there. But I think that's a big part of it. Even though he loves it and he would do it as often as he could, if I'm not mentally there, it's just not gonna happen. It just can't. And then I think I do think he's well, both of you really, probably why y'all are such good friends, since y'all are so similar in this way. But I do think a lot of men just don't know how to do it that well. And we should certainly go into kind of a tips and tricks piece, at some point because, we got some tips. I think we could do a little bit of that.
So, question. So you say some guys probably don't do it well. Are you saying like do you have past experience where you thought, oh, oh,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
sweet, but you should get up here because you're wasting your
Absolutely.
time.
Absolutely. Also, you are my first ever that wants it as often as you do. So it was not as much of a main event before we got together.
So what is a bad um what do we call it?
Oral.
A guy going down on you poorly.
Yeah,
What does
yeah.
that describe what that is? What's like you just
Like he
can't
doesn't know where the spot
Fumbling.
is?
Like, think
I
about
mean,
fumbling around. Like, there's no maybe there's no coordination to it. There's no, lightly getting into it. So Brad does a good job of just being very light at first and trying to kind of mentally get you there and not going straight to the vagina. Don't go straight there. There's part of the leg, there's the thigh, there's above the vagina. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to kind of go around and about to kind of tease it a little bit. But yeah, if they're going straight there, if there's not much coordination with the tongue and lips and what have you, and honestly, I would have never thought about this in depth. Even the way I'm describing it now, I've never thought through this. So we're just kind of, going off the cuff here, but I do know in prior relationships, I first of all, they were not as interested as you are. Um and second of all, I mean, yeah, if they're going to fumble around and it's not that good, then yeah, you just go straight into, "Oh, I just want to do you. Let's get right into it." That kind of thing. So you can have them like skip ahead. Like skip to the good
wow.
part. Yeah.
Listening to that, it's interesting. And I think we should have a whole nother episode where we talk about how to do it properly. I mean,
Mhm.
number one, it sounds like there's some bad energy. This is someone who doesn't really, it's not confident. They're not secure in themselves but hey, we can talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
I do see there's a lot of complexity just with the mental aspect of it, but do you think there's an oral sex gap? I know we've kind of talked about that in the past, but obviously, I don't think we're typical. Just going back to what Brad
Mhm.
was saying, because I think my wife gets it more than I do.
Yeah.
Where I think in reality, for most couples, it's probably the opposite.
You think?
I think so.
Oh, that's
I think the
interesting.
guys occasionally and very few women are getting it
Yeah.
on a regular basis.
That's a really good question, I think,
it sounds like
for
I've been doing this wrong.
It's true. Or you've been doing it
You're telling me
right.
all the guys are getting blown more than
No, there's
I
no
am.
way.
Absolutely.
There's
Absolutely.
no way guys are getting blown more than you are, sir.
I
There's
don't know.
no way. You
I'm not
sit
saying
down.
they get it more than you, but they get it more often than their ladies do
Yes,
because
thank
very
you.
few guys are giving
All
back.
right, stay
Yeah.
tuned. Next episode, we're gonna have a shared calendar, blowjobs. Everybody mark their blowjob, and we'll compare
Oh my god, we should. We should
the
start tracking
Suburban
it.
Sex blowjob calendar.
How do we do a suburban sex poll where
Yeah.
everybody just talks
Yeah.
about who's has the bigger gap, the men or the
Right.
women?
That's I do think that's an excellent question, but first of all, when you say oral sex gap, I feel like I mean, this has got to be there's got to be research around this, and Remy, you are the researcher of the
Well,
group. So,
you hear about orgasm gap. That's the big one that everybody
okay.
talks about
Okay.
because guys, it's much easier. You know, guys are the ones getting off, and unfortunately, not all the ladies, our listeners or friends, they're not
Mhm.
having orgasms as often as their husbands, whether
Sure.
or their partners.
Yeah.
Whether that's lack of skill, whether it's they're just not prioritizing themselves. They're not. It's just not happening as often. So the orgasm gap is, I guess, the official term. So
Mhm.
I've kind of taken another step and say there's an oral sex gap
I
because
love it.
I think the guys are probably getting more attention down there than the girls are.
That's probably true. Now let me do say about the, orgasm gap, I that is probably one of my main reasons for wanting to do a sex podcast as well. I think it is so important for us to prioritize our own orgasms. So, I mean, just hearing about sex and getting to talk about it and just kind of getting yourself a little bit more excited about it and being able to talk about it more with your spouse is so important. So, I'm a big fan of closing that gap. Um, but yeah, back to the oral sex gap. I love that you've coined a new term there. Um, okay, even if many men tend to get off more than their wives, in
Might be on
hetero
their own,
marriage.
but
Yeah, in a heterosexual marriage, like the typical we're always gonna be kind of talking about the typical male versus female libidos and whatnot. Everyone is so different, so it's kind of fun to kind of dive into that. But, um, but Brad made a joke, but I really don't think a lot of women give blowjobs unless they actually kind of enjoy it. And it's funny, a few months ago, we were all having a party, and as we do in our friend group, all of the men tend to gravitate towards a room, and all of the women tend to gravitate towards another room. It feels like ninth grade socials, but we're all just chit chatting amongst ourselves, and getting girl time, which is great. But there was certainly, as we were talking about sex, and we did get to blowjobs and this and that, there's certainly not a that's not a high priority for a lot of married women, is giving a blowjob. So that I think is just probably life, but not really prioritizing it as this is fun, this is adding something different to your sex life and all of that. But what I thought was so interesting, I mentioned something about spitting versus swallowing. And one of my girlfriends said, when I was saying something about swallowing, she was like, you're married. You don't have to do that anymore. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, oh, Brad. Um, yeah. I But come on. Like, we need to still cultivate some of that dating life, like some of that excitement with each other. Geez, are we not?
I
We
I
can't
don't
stop
like that
trying.
attitude
Oh, I'm
just
sure you
because
don't like that.
it irks me because it's like, all right, I'm gonna try while we're dating, but now he's mine. I don't have to try. But then again, there's the
Right.
whole pillow princess. You just take care of me. I'm gonna, just dead fish. You don't want that.
Oh my God. Am I a pillow princess? I kind of am a little bit.
There's a
Oh
time and a
my
place for that.
gosh. Whatever. That's just because
All
you're
right,
willing to
so
do it
spitting
more.
and swallowing. So spitting, swallowing, swallowing is for dating. Is that what I'm hearing from
Yes.
certain wives? Okay.
That's what I'm hearing from the girls. I
Wow.
and Remy, this was me, all of our friend group. So I'm outing all of them right now. Their poor
Mhm.
husbands when they hear this. But
That's right.
all of our friend group plus a few others that happened to be at this party, every single one of them was shocked that I still swallow. Shocked. And I don't think I'm doing anything out of the norm, abnormal.
Absolutely
I
not.
I, I truly think this is me not trying to be, slutty with my husband. I think I know it's something that he enjoys. So why not continue it? But oh
But
my
for the
God,
record,
Remy, it
that's
just
not
blew my
slutty. It's your
mind.
husband.
Well,
In
true.
theory, you should be saving the best for your husband. He's the
That's
one
a
that
really good
you'd
point.
want to honor with that. not some
Mhm.
random dude that you dated 20 years ago that means nothing.
Right. Oh gosh, that's so true, and that's a good way of looking at it too. We are committed to our partner. We've decided to have sex with them for the rest of our lives. It can't suck,
Well, it might
right?
can suck in a good way.
It might suck. So, maybe that's why we're listening. Yeah. No, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked because I I had no idea that I was truly alone on this. And there's probably many factors. I mean, we've some of us have talked about like a gag reflex and whatnot. So I think when we go into actual tips on blowjobs and going down under all of that good stuff, I think we can get into some of that.
Certainly.
But even like, girl, just like swallow a little, you can just like do a little bit, do it just a
Question
little. Yes.
question
Hide
for
hot tub.
Remy: is Reagan a swallower?
No, she's got the gag reflex issue, so that's a big deal for her. So that's one
Hmm.
thing we're trying to help her overcome. But yeah, gag reflex a really big deal.
I
She
love
goes
that. We're
for it,
trying to help
but
her overcome. Like
or I
like
would
there's a doctor
like her
involved.
to, but no, she does it certain ways where it doesn't go as deep, but still,
Yes.
yeah, it
So,
definitely.
Mhm.
and I just want to go on record as saying, I don't think most guys really care whether you swallow. They just want you to finish. Like, if you
Yeah.
want to spit it out, like, I don't personally don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it may be a bit of a turn off to hear you like spitting right after,
Mhm.
because you're like, oh, well, you just.
Well, I think
Oh,
the
she doesn't
husband's
like it.
But
partners, the guys are gonna be happy
at
whether
that
you
point,
just say, "Hey, can you go on me?" I don't think anyone's gonna complain. I think it's the attitude. You could make it fun without
Yeah.
swallowing. I mean, the idea is
sure,
you're enjoying this experience so much and you're making him feel valued and important. And if you say it in a fun way, "Hey, can you go on me?" versus spitting it out and making it a
Yeah.
whole production and it's so gross and
no,
that's
the
not making him
Yeah.
feel special.
no on her chest is not going to be the same.
What?
No, that's
True.
not. No,
It's not the
Well, I'm
same?
just
no.
I'm just
I'm
saying.
saying if the guy gets to finish in the lady's mouth, there will never be
Even better.
complaints. That's
Mm,
Absolutely true.
whatever
okay.
happens after that doesn't really matter to the guy.
Yeah.
True. It
Okay.
shows over,
That's good to know. I
Where for a
like
girl, she can keep going, but for a guy, I mean,
I
we're
mean, it's a
kinda
bonus.
done.
I don't want you to stop doing it, dude.
No, I've decided now that I don't have to anymore. We're married, right?
Okay, we're gonna delete all this.
Podcast is over, canceled by the producer.
No, I find this so intriguing, and I'm always learning something from Brad. We talk about sex quite a bit, but I'm always learning something. I think that's very interesting. That even the spitting versus swallowing is not that big of a deal to you. I wonder if that's a big a deal to most men. I feel like that's like the cliche of blowjobs and whatnot, and you hear that in movies a lot. So I wasn't sure, but it's good to know that even just kind of taking it in the moment and just not acting like you're gonna vomit,
Right.
um,
You
is
don't want to feel like it's repulsive.
right. I get that. I kind of get
Well
that.
well, there's a concept of cock worship or pussy worship where you're actually honoring somebody. The whole experience is making them feel special and beautiful. And, if I'm going down on a girl, if I act disgusted, how's she going to enjoy that?
Sure.
I have to make her feel valued. And it almost is. I mean, not to, maybe that's a strange word, but it almost is an act of worship to some degree. I mean, obviously that's a spiritual, more tantric way to look at it, but you're honoring that person and it's all about their pleasure. I
Mm,
mean, it's just simply for them and you're inviting them to just receive. And how many chances do our ladies have to just receive? They're giving and giving and giving. This one's all about them. So to me, that's an awesome thing that husbands should be trying to do on a regular basis.
If they know how to do it right.
And
Hey, we can help with that.
it's
Mhm.
like there's probably guys out there who don't like doing it,
Yeah.
and they have their reasons. But I think also, like me personally, I don't like a lot of hair down there. And
Hmm.
if you were like really insistent on having a lot of hair, I don't think I'd be worshiping down there as much as I am now.
True.
So there could be
Yeah.
that going on.
That's true.
It's
That's
personal
true.
preference. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a certain standard of keeping yourself clean and trimmed, and I think it's going to help the ladies too, just because one less thing for them to worry about. Like, well, is there too much hair? Am I clean? And is it okay down there? Is he having fun? But if you take care of things, if things are somewhat trimmed, and I've tried everything to keep things trimmed down there. I've even
Yeah.
did waxing for a while just to try to make it more inviting for her.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I do wonder, just because I've had enough girl talk, I do wonder if some women don't, just because they're not inviting anyone. They're not inviting their husband. They're kind of a mindset of this. I am blocking even the thought of it. And I think that's just the dynamic of a marriage. There's so many different things that change when you have kids and whatnot, and different preferences, different.
Okay, so your girl talk with our friend group, how often are they getting it down there from their husbands? Give me your ballpark.
No, I don't know. I
You
don't
don't know
know.
that? Y'all haven't discussed that.
We eh, we usually
We need
discuss
a survey.
frequency of sex in general, and typically, like, I'm not counting how
Oh,
often
I'm
that's happening
counting.
with us. You're Shut up.
He's got a spreadsheet.
I know. He is gonna bust out a calendar. Um, no, we've talked about frequency of sex in general, not of oral.
What?
Yeah, I know. So, okay, so fine. Give me a homework assignment. I'll collect some data from all
I
of our
just can't believe
friends.
that you don't have that number ready to go.
I'll build you a fucking
Well,
PowerPoint
that's the
presentation
point
about
of the
it.
podcast, though. We want to start fun conversations. We want
Yeah,
to learn about other people, respect where they're at, and then hopefully, give everybody some fun ideas, maybe
I
some good homework
know.
assignments, just to kind of
Yes.
get everybody to try something out of their usual routine.
Mhm. I that is important. I mean, just talking about oral may just kind of open that door a little bit more, not necessarily to doing it more often, but even just to talk about it. If you haven't had that conversation with your spouse and it's not happening, it's probably worth just talking about it again. Bring it up in conversation. Do they miss it? Do they wish they had more of it, and vice versa? Because
Hey,
I
March 14th is coming, guys, by the way. You know what March 14th is? It's a
no.
month after Valentine's Day. It's steak and blowjob day. So it's all about the
Oh my
romance on
god.
February 14th. But on March 14th, it's all about the men and go get a steak and get a blowjob.
That's
Oh my
so
god.
dumb. That's so dumb.
That's awesome. But no.
I have questions. This is an important topic to me.
All
Oh,
right, bring
so
it.
important.
So, okay, so I know I've got things broken in my brain that makes me want to go down on you all the time. But for normal people, they don't want to do it all the time. I understand that. But for you, um, obviously, well, not obviously for everybody to hear, but um,
Yeah, no one's been in our bedroom, so
Everybody knows.
what is it about going down on me or women going down on their spouse in general? What is it that it's not pleasurable? Not what is it that makes them not want to do it every time?
the number one is the gag reflex. So I think there's this feeling that you've got to take it as deep as possible. And again, I think that's very cliche for most movies and TV shows and things that talk about blowjobs. And I've kind of worked around that in using my hand more, or vibrator or whatnot, to just kind of help add something more that my mouth may not be able to do on its own. But it I mean, I've seen memes where they say it's called a job for a reason. It takes work. Um, it's your jaw kind of hurts after a while. Mine does sometimes. It's a little bit more effort that you have to put in, and with sex, sometimes I don't have to put in as much effort when I'm like bending over. So I'm having to be more thoughtful and proactive about what I'm doing when it's time for a blowjob versus sometimes just getting laid is
See, that's
easier.
so interesting to me because, like, I enjoy going down on you so much. Like, I've
We talked
I'm
about how this is awkward.
I'm gonna do the I'm gonna go down on her right after the
Oh
show.
my god, shut
Nice.
up. Shut
No, I actually
up.
won't because she won't let
Edit
me.
that out. Oh
There's
my
0
god.
chance I'll get to do that tonight.
Shit.
But, no, it's just weird because, um, I would think doing
It's
something
hard
like that
work.
is
Hot
it
Tub's
just
getting
doesn't turn your
introspective
brain
over
on,
there.
though.
I know.
I wish the
Well,
video
okay.
of this was being broadcast because he's like deep thoughts, you know. He's looking up
This is
as
And I
fascinating.
am bright red. Yes. No, I think it just takes more effort. You really have to put some work into it, and your jaw could be sore. You may have a gag reflex. It's not comfortable having something in your mouth for a period of time. Um, but there's also, I mean, if you can kind of cheat your way through it, like with, and I say cheat, but it's not even cheating, with just using your hand more and using your tongue more to lick, and instead of, we can
You
go
don't
into
have
all
to
of
go
this.
deep. You don't have to go deep,
I
ladies.
know. I don't
You
think
don't have
I
to deep throat
but
it.
I think a lot of women feel like they do have to go deep because, again, that's the cliche version of a blowjob when they see it in movies
and they're
and
watching
stuff. So,
old porn. Yeah, exactly. That's not
yeah.
necessarily real
Yeah.
life.
Addie does not deep throat.
Oh my god, you don't have
Hey,
to.
we're gonna put it out there. She
Oh
doesn't. She
god.
doesn't. She rarely does it, and she's got an excellent technique.
Thank you.
Like,
But I
I
rarely do it.
no, what she does the more of like the, you know, ice cream cone kinda
Yes.
deal.
Yes. I treat
Well,
it
I'm
like an ice
looking
cream
forward
cone.
to the tips. Hopefully, we'll have
Yeah.
a tip episode so
Just
we
the
can
tip.
learn more about her
Just the tip.
technique.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure all the
Yeah.
ladies are
We'll
looking
get
forward
there.
to a blowjob class from Addie.
I Oh my god. I am not going to pretend to teach any sort of class. There are actual experts out there for that, but I know what works. I know what works for me. Um, but yeah, so we can certainly do tips. I do find it interesting. I mean, just the mere fact that we're talking about it hopefully encourages others to talk about it with their spouse a little bit more. It's fun, this kind of thing should be fun with your spouse. It should be fun to just kind of ask, hey, when was the last time I gave you a blowjob, or, what was your favorite part about that? Or, you know, um, w- would you want to go down on me more? Questions like that I think are good to just kind of spark a conversation when you're hopefully on a date night or date day, but getting some time away from kids and work and whatnot. You've got to have those times where you can kind of close the other boxes mentally and focus on your sex life and your partner, and but you got to kind of carve out time for that.
Maybe that's the key, is just, making everything fun again and not taking sex quite so seriously. It doesn't have to be a high pressure thing. It doesn't have to be this deep, hard, difficult task. It's just having fun with the person that you've chosen to spend your life with, and having fun together again, and making the conversation around sex fun rather than this high stressful thing. Because I know, just thinking back, I mean, I, my partner and I, Reagan, when I started learning about sex, a lot of it started post kids, when her sex drive was really not that high,
Mm.
And my sex drive was a lot higher. That was kind of my way of dealing with this new stress of this new life. And my sex drive's always been a little higher, but
A
mine, I feel
little.
like it didn't change where hers dropped off a lot.
Yeah.
So, I would pressure her for a long time until I learned that, this is not a healthy approach.
Right.
So, a lot of what I've learned is to take the pressure off, and that gives a lot better results and brings us closer. When you
Oh,
add pressure, you're pushing each other apart, which is
yeah.
not going to work for anybody.
Remy, that's I think that's brilliant, and it may just be having to live through that in order to get there, but I mean, we've had fights before on our sex life overall. I mean, most couples either fight about money or sex. So if it's not happening as often as someone in the relationship wants it to, then it's going to cause some tension. But I think just the open conversation and asking the right questions and making time to talk about it and get to know each other and what they want is so important without that pressure. Brad certainly does better on his side as well with less pressure and just kind of asking the question or prompting a, "Hey, would you wanna do this?" And he's gotta be okay with me saying no because that's gonna happen, more often than he wants, but, the more we talk about it and the more we make it more of a regular part of our conversation, um, the better it is, and I feel like the more frequent we've been. Um, so that's been helpful. But
Well,
yeah, I
that's what
think
this podcast is about. It's about
exactly.
sex in the suburbs or sex in this life stage where
Mhm.
things are a little bit more challenging than it was in our 20s. But hopefully, we can start that dialogue and our listeners can, I don't know, learn from us is the right word,
I
but
know, I know. We're just regular folks, but,
exactly.
we've got some tips and I bet our listeners do too. But you know what? Who else does? Our friends. So we're gonna have some of our friends on throughout some of these episodes. So we'll get not just our 2 separate married life perspectives, but, we've got quite a group that, is excited to share their side as well. So I feel like because every couple is so different, it'll be interesting to hear kind of a behind the scenes perspective on how some people's married sex lives are going.
And it's going to be real fun because, I'm sounding real confident right now, but all of a sudden when Reagan gets on the call, we will see how that dynamic shifts because we've got Hot Tub Brad on the line right now.
True.
But Reagan's not here, so I can be, yeah, man, I'm the best. But I'm sure she'll have a totally different perspective once she gets
She
on the
will.
on the
She
podcast.
will.
So,
Yeah. No, that's all right. That's all right. That's what we'll get out of this. I think that's I'm sure most couples kind of have a similar dynamic there as well, but that's what we're gonna see. We're gonna see how each of us has our own behind the scenes look on suburban sex overall. But you know what? I think this is a good start. We went right for it with oral. Got me a little embarrassed in a couple of parts, but that's what we're doing. We're
if we're
having
not
some
a
fun
little
here.
embarrassed, we're not doing it right. So,
I guess. But we've got more to come. I know we've got a toy episode on the docket because that's one of our favorite topics is sharing the best toy options that we've got, and a few others. But you know what? Until then, we'll try to get a little bit more of our married sex live perspectives. But until then, we're wishing you all the best of your own suburban sex.